Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation, investigating the question, which type of weather typically affects economies to the greatest extent. Thanks for listening, I hope you find it interesting. Initially my ideas were to combine my knowledge of economics with either my interest in sport or geography. Due to my hopes to go on to university to study economics and geography, I chose to focus the attention on those two. I also wanted to use my skills in statistics and maths to be able to correlate these subjects with data that I found, and therefore this would extend my educational values of the project. Aims and means of the project were to utilise the research and information that I found effectively, consider historical data and accounts, recognise that in the weather and economies short and long-term impacts can emerge, and therefore arrive at a well-supported conclusion to complement by the statistics that I found. Features of the product, it was important to consider the consumer as well as businesses, since they both have outlooks and confidence which may motivate them to make decisions in the economy. To consider different wealth in countries, so this might lead to different capacities to cope with certain events. International influence, for example, England and the USA may have trade links that are consistent, and these might be affected by certain weather events. And also, the weather may affect satisfaction of demand to a certain extent, so these would consider that as well. Methodology, one of the main features I used was gross domestic product, since this accounts for consumption, investment, government spending and the trade balance of the country. It monitors consistent performance since figures are released every 3 months. However, limitations to this include the black economy, which is trading that goes on unmonitored by the government. In countries such as Nigeria, this can account for 70% of financial transactions, so it can be risky. However, in developed countries, it tends to only account for 15%. In terms of the weather data, I'll focus on climatic averages and then look at anomalies away from this to determine how they affected the economy, and therefore this would enhance the use of correlation of statistics. Additional factors, balance of payments, which is a system recording the nation's financial transactions with others globally. This is important because weather can affect a certain aspect of the balance of payment, not just GDP as a whole. National dependencies, certain countries may depend on another nation for specific resources. For example, Saudi Arabia holds 21.9% of the world's oil reserves. Societal unrest and political unrest may emerge from certain government actions in relation to the weather. And climatic outlook leading to consumer action, as already mentioned. It's not just businesses who are affected by the weather. Weather's impact on the economies, decisions that by consumers and producers shaping the nation's economic values. Business performance can prove responsive to climatic trends, so businesses may take into account certain trends in climates and therefore make their target markets different with those. Particular firms are dependent on foreign resources, for example, Saudi Arabian oil, and it's important to consider that significant reliance on others holds a lot of risks with the economy if something goes wrong in that particular country. So the behaviour of the consumer, it's become apparent that the type of weather with the most influence on education and awareness raising in the last few years has been in the sun protection market. In America, the protection market has gone up 150% in the last 11 years. Accounting for inflation, that goes up 59%, but overall that led to a £2.366 billion increase overall in the protection market from sun. Consumer awareness of air conditioning and central heating has also been important. A New Delhi shop owner last year reported a 150% increase in sales. So, leading back to the question of my original project, the part of weather that's become most important in education is sun, well, warm weather. This is emphasised by Coca-Cola's reactionary vending machines, which adjusted the price of their products to the temperature. And this brought into context an idea of temperature elasticity of demand, where consumers were prepared to pay much more when they decided they really needed a drink. Dominant countries typically have a flexible, responsive strategy where they're not dependent on one country for resources because of their wealth, whereas those dependent on exports do not have the wealth to adjust, so those particularly associated with agriculture might not be able to produce the wealth so that they can have different strategies. On the note of distinguishing restricted economies, Ethiopian drought since 1965 have proven these restrictions of being dependent on just one type of sector, and the droughts have majorly affected their growth in certain years, and this can be correlated. Meanwhile, in the UK, short-term impacts of snow suggested a lack of capacity to cope, and particularly the transportation of resources suffered, and that showed that whilst they may be flexible in the sectors that they use, the physical resource transportation cannot be avoided. So this is the UK GDP temperature relation for 2009. Whilst the correlation is weak, it does show a slight relation between higher temperatures leading to improved growth. However, this is not so consequential. However, this correlation was magnified in 2010, where there was a steep correlation between temperatures returning to the norm and GDP increasing. However, in 2011, this wasn't the case. UK GDP rainfall relation. This showed that when there was actually a greater amount of rainfall, GDP extended to a greater extent. This might be expected in poorer countries where agriculture was more of a factor. However, again, 2010, 2011, this correlation was disproven, where the correlation was weak. UK GDP sunshine relation. In all 3 years, as you can see, 2009, 2010 and 2011, the figures actually showed that when there was more sunshine, the growth of the economy actually decreased. So that would, even though education and awareness has been raised and money's been spent on that as a section of the economy, the actual growth is not apparently related to it. This is a case-specific correlation. At the end of 2010, in November and December, the temperatures were 1.6 and 5 degrees respectively below the averages for 1971 to 2000. This related in a clear deficit in the balance of trade in January 2011 that saw the lowest over a period of 3 years. This then showed the impacts of international relations. Germany is responsible for £27.5 billion worth of imports from the UK, and when the temperature struck in the UK, leading to lower exports, you can see that Germany's imports dropped slightly to the lowest they have been seen in the last year. UK balance of payment and temperature relation. This showed a constant relation between temperature going up and balance of payments improving. This could be due to more efficient transport routes and greater consumer confidence in the stability of the economy. Historical snowfall in the UK. Information is ultimately limited because of the distinction that needs to be made between rainfall and snowfall. Generally, most data was revolving around precipitation. Abnormal events have had greater relative impacts nowadays than they did in the past due to the concentration of the economy. Snow is attributed to cold weather, and this is implied by the effects on the economy in winter 2010 and 2011. In terms of poorer countries, Ethiopia's most significant droughts in the past 15 years were seen in 1999, 2000, 2002. The 2002 one was significant enough to lead to a downfall in the economy in 2003 as well, and this saw the 4 lowest points of growth in the past 13 years. Sector compositions. Leading on from that graph, you can see that Ethiopia depends on agriculture for nearly half of its economy. This suggests that they are reliant on a certain type of weather for growing crops, whereas the UK is more dependent on services and industry. High dependence on the industry could explain the drop in growth due to the cold weather at the end of 2010 and by the disruption of transportation resources. These are a couple of countries that I researched relating the Human Development Index to agricultural percentage in the sector composition. This showed that generally countries, depending on agriculture to a more significant extent, have a lower Human Development Index, which could suggest that either the agricultural sector is less economically provides less economic wealth, or certain events related to the weather have disrupted the growth of the countries. Conclusive points. In developed nations, capacity to cope are crucial and provide the required stability. If a certain event occurs in one country, for example, Hurricane Nargis in Bangladesh, these countries have the wealth to adapt their importing of resources so that they can achieve all the means of demand. Relation between sustained effects and growth in the more developed countries. This essentially brings that idea into play that we have a number of options with relation to the resources. Unusually cold weather is the most costly to these economies because of the disruption of resources. Given that rainfall and sunshine was not seen to fully affect the economy, it was the short-term, unpredictable events that caused the most disruption. In less developed nations with a high dependency on agriculture, it was more long-term, sustained extreme weather that disrupted the economies, such as the hot weather experienced in Ethiopia. Recovery is often slow and hinders social well-being, which can have longer-term impacts because of political or social unrest resulting. Literature review. I selected 5 resources that were particularly helpful in my studying. Beating the Business Cycle. This essentially provided me with information on how companies react to certain events that happen, one of them being weather. Social capital and weather shocks in Ethiopia. In particular, this demonstrated how poorer countries can be affected and unable to cope with long-term impacts of weather. And then Office for National Statistics, CIA World Factbook and World Bank all aided with my statistical collection, and this allowed the further analysis of my work. Obstructed progress. There was a real lack of data in poorer regions who may have not had the technological advancements previously to collect the data. Therefore, there was an absence of long-term trends and reliability, and so it was hard to correlate significant events of the past with the economy. There's a substantial quantity of contrasting factors involved, so not all turns in the economy may be attributed to the weather, and it's therefore difficult to offer alternative reasons to these anomalies. Finally, successes of the project. My knowledge was ultimately extended. It gave me the opportunity to practice the analysis of statistics and provide reasons to turn to the economy from these. Gave me an appreciation of the diversity of the factors that are involved in the development of an economy, and ultimately it's provided me with greater enthusiasm for the subjects that I hope to carry on into higher education.
Well done. Well done. Well done. You've actually covered all the different aspects. I actually was writing questions and then I found out the answers later. So pretty good stuff. But having said this, we would have a little question and answer session very quickly. If you guys have any questions?
Yeah.
Do you think that if we had, instead of 1 hour added on in the summer daylight saving times, instead of having 2 hours, do you think that would be beneficial to the economy?
Potentially, yeah. Depending on when people travel to work. Obviously, labour is an effective part of factors of production, and ultimately, when the sun's setting at 9:30 on the longest day of the year, the majority of people aren't at work.
So you get an extra hour trading with flights?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I do believe that, and yeah, it would probably enhance the labour and the time, reduce the time lost in the production of the economy.
Wasn't it Samoa that changed their time by day? Yeah, I think. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The last slide you got, when you're going over yeah, I was listening, the others as well. The appreciation of diversity of factors involved.
Yeah.
Can you just explain what you mean by that?
So, when, for example, when the economy shrunk at the end of 2010, although there was a correlation with weather, it was 5 degrees below the average, it's also important to consider European countries where this cold strike may have affected, investor confidence who may have seen this disruption in the UK, and this could have led to long-term depreciation of the economy. Also, when correlation wasn't apparent, it could have been due to the weather could have been affected a certain part of it, but this could have been contradicted by other parts such as the recession, interest rates. So it gave me an appreciation of how many factors are involved, and that the weather cannot be singularly deemed to affect the economy.
How important do you think weather is if you compare it with global economic trends? There's a bit of a recession recently.
Yeah. What became apparent was that the events had to be extreme to affect the economy and international influences. I would say that countries, now that technology is advancing, they're becoming increasingly adaptive to the weather, and so yeah, the events would have to be extreme. Therefore, I would attribute more important factors to changing in growth. However, the weather can affect it, and investor confidence mainly.
I was interested in the Coca-Cola reactionary vending machines. How the hell do they work?
They were developed in 1999 in America and are now used in Japan. They have temperature sensors which adjusts the